Do you like mathematics? Or you're like me, that someone who's been struggling your whole life with numbers and now you just try to avoid them? Well, today I have the privilege to talk with Marcus du Sautoy, one of the best mathematicians in the world. Really. Marcus here is a math professor at Oxford University. He is also a writer, a columnist, and he is a BBC host for a TV show. That's what a combination of skills. Marcus, thank you so much for taking a break on your busy schedule and to spending time talking to your Spanish readers.
It's a pleasure.
Welcome to Colombia.
Thank you. I love Colombia. I think this is my fifth or sixth time here, so I'm always looking for an opportunity to come to your wonderful country.
Thank you. That's great to hear it. So, first of all, I want to tell you, being a mathematician and also a writer, it's not a very common combination, especially here in our country.
Yes.
What I mean is, either you choose numbers or you choose letters,
yes,
not both. So you choose one and develop your career based on that decision. So do you want to walk us through the process of becoming a writer to make that jump from numbers to letters?
Yes. I think it, at its heart, is the fact that mathematics is not just about numbers, it is in fact a language. It's nature's language, it's the language of the universe. And I think that was what was so special that I learned from my teacher at school, that this is a language which helps you to tell the stories about how the universe works. And so I don't think there's that big a difference between being a storyteller and being a mathematician. It's just my stories are about numbers and geometry, but you know, I'm still looking for an interesting narrative, moments of jeopardy, surprise, and so I think there's a lot more in common. And I think, as you say, our education system very often asks us to make a choice. It seems to see two camps, and I think in a way mathematics, I understood, was an amazing bridge between the world of the arts and the world of science. Mathematics is definitely the language for science, but it also underpins music. It's used in literature, poetry has a lot of pattern and symmetry in it. And there are some beautiful examples. Shakespeare, one of the great wordsmiths of all time, loved numbers. And he used numbers as a way of giving information to his listeners. For example, whenever there's magic, Shakespeare uses iambic pentameter. It's units of 10. But when there's magic, it goes down to 7, a prime number.
Yeah.
And so in Midsummer Night's Dream, when Puck is doing a spell, he's using 7 syllables, not 10. So I think there's so much crossover, and this is what I hope to do in my books, to reveal how much mathematics there is in all of the things you love.
Yes, that's exactly why we're here. I want to talk to you about this fantastic book you wrote. Se llama Para pensar mejor, el arte del atajo. Es de la editorial Acantilado y lo distribuye en nuestro país el grupo Penta Editorial. At the beginning of this book, you tell us that when you were a teenager, you were kind of lazy.
Yep.
That you try to do things with minimum effort, right? And you said that that's the reason why you decide to study math. And that may sound like a contradictory for us. Because for people, for common people like me, I mean, we always see mathematics like the difficult and hardest path. But you saw the opposite. You saw something very different. I mean, how did that happen? What happened there?
Well, let me give you a little example, which is the one that my teacher used to illustrate the incredible power of mathematics to save you lots of hard work. So he told us this story about a young mathematician in Germany who was asked to add up the numbers from 1 to 100.
Yeah, that's the first
starts
chapter.
the book,
It's
yeah.
great. It's amazing.
Yeah, so, you know, your listeners, viewers can think, okay, how would I do that? I could do it the hard way, which is the hard work. You think, oh, it's lots of arithmetic. I've got 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. I'll make mistakes. I'll take me ages. But this young mathematician, Gauss, who's actually the hero of the book in a way, he's like the master shortcutter. He realized, no, you don't want to start at the beginning and work your way to the end. You want to start at both ends and work your way into the middle, because you take 1 plus 100, that's 101. 2 plus 99,
It's the same.
it's also 101. And then you start to get that, aha, I see. So a 3 plus 98, 101. And so you suddenly realize, I don't have to do any work at all. I've got 50 pairs of numbers adding up to 101, so it's 5,050. And I think that illustrated, there are hard ways to do things, but if you take a step back and look at the things in a clever way, you can find a fast way to get to your solution. And the beautiful thing is that shortcut works even if you say, okay, you could do 1 to 100, but I'm going to do 1 to 1,000,000 now. Yeah. But that's the beauty of these shortcuts. They kind of abstract ways of thinking, so you can apply them to whatever situation you hit. So I think that story, which I start the book, and which my teacher inspired me with, my gosh, this subject is about avoiding work. Not as you say, many people think it's about the long sums and the long division, but actually this book is full of 2,000 years of clever ways that we've come up to avoid doing the work we don't want to do.
There's a lot of history here. A lot of history.
I find history a very powerful way to motivate people about my subject, because when people understand where a mathematical idea came from, it isn't just out of a hat like a rabbit. They understand the context. I think that gives them a lot more understanding of the mathematics itself. So I think history is a very powerful partner in the books that I write.
Thank you for that. Speaking about shortcuts, you told me this is your 5th time here in Colombia, 5th, 6th, something like that. Okay, I wanna share some Colombian culture with you.
Oh yes.
We take pride in hard work, even manual or physical work. Okay, I know the world is changing, and we see the concept between work and effort different.
Yeah.
Right. But for the old generation, we were raised with this idea. If you want to be successful, you have to work really, really, really hard and not taking any shortcut. If you want the minimum effort low, that's take you nowhere, right? We were raised like that.
Yeah.
But in this book, you told us that it might be a different way to success.
Yes.
Sometimes taking a shortcut, it's a very good thing. Do you want to talk us about
I
that?
think this is a beautiful question, because it really goes to the heart of why shortcuts are useful. Because I love working. You know, I'm actually, although I was a lazy teenager, I love working at my mathematics. I love writing books. I love making television. I love working, but I want to do the work that I love doing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do the work that is boring, is just work for work's sake. So in the book I talk about Aristotle's idea of 2 sorts of work. There's praxis and proesis. Proesis is work for a goal. And I want to get to the goal as quickly as possible. So if there are shortcuts that get me there, all well and good. But praxis is work for its own sake. If you enjoy the work, for example, if you want to go, when I was in Colombia last time, I went and did the Lost City tour.
Okay.
Amazing. We went from Santa Marta, we walked for 3 days into the mountains. It was hard work. We were carrying our backpack. But the reward of that work I could have taken a helicopter, but that wouldn't have been as rewarding.
You don't want to do that.
No.
You want the long...
I enjoyed the long way that time.
Exactly.
So my shortcuts, and it's important, they're not cutting corners. There's a difference. Shortcuts still get you to your destination. Cutting corners I'm not interested in, because then your house falls down, your business collapses. I want shortcuts which really build you a strong house build you a good business, but allow you the time to do the things that you love. So, and what's funny is, although this is a lot of mathematical shortcuts, people often ask me, is there a shortcut to finding shortcuts? And
That's
there
a very good question.
Isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
I love that question. And in fact, the answer is no. This represents a huge amount of hard work, long-time failure of mathematicians who eventually came up with these clever ways of thinking. So in this book, I've distilled, 2,000 years of hard slogging to find these beautiful shortcuts. I just came from Panama.
Okay.
You think there's a beautiful shortcut there, which is the Panama Canal,
Yeah.
which gets you from one
ocean to the other.
another. But just think how long that took to make. It took decades to build that. Now you can go through in a matter of hours. And that's the lovely thing. Shortcuts take a long time to make, but once they're there, they allow everyone else to pass quickly through to the destination.
That's a very, very good example of what a shortcut is. And speaking of, when I was reading, I found very interesting that you said that there's some things in life that you can take a shortcut.
Yes.
For example, if you want to be a professional musician or an athlete, there is no shortcut. You just need to spend thousands of hours practicing. There is no shortcut for that.
Yeah. And you know what the kind of defining element is? That becoming an athlete or being a musician, it's about the body.
Yes.
And actually changing the body. Or think about the brain if you want to undo years of trauma as a child. I talk to psychologists in the book. There really is no shortcut to changing brain structure, making muscle memory for, I'm trying to learn the cello at the moment. And, the muscle memory.
You still play that?
Yeah, I play with a quartet in London. And,
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
It is very nice. Music is one of my passions. But as you say, there are some shortcuts in music. And I talked to a cellist in one of the chapters in the book.
Yes, I remember.
And that's why we learn our scales and our arpeggios. They're a bit boring, but those are a sort of shortcut, because if your fingers learn those, so much of music is made up of elements of scales or arpeggios. So it's a bit like learning to read. You don't read by looking at every letter. You start that, but then you recognize, collections of letters are words. And so there are shortcuts in music which are learning these, but at its heart, you're having to learn muscle memory. And as an athlete, you're having to build muscle. That just takes time.
Yes.
So, but it's interesting to know, what are the professions where there are shortcuts and where are there no shortcuts?
Yes. Okay, Marcus, now I want to be completely honest with you, and please don't be offended. I love letters, but I hate math.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I think is because me, as many people, we think that we barely use math in our daily lives. What I mean is, after I finished high school, I have never had to factor again. Never.
Yeah.
So most people think that, okay, if you know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you're good. You don't need anything else. How do you approach to those people in your book and in your life?
This is something I spend a lot of time in my books, in television, in radio, in articles I write, that to try and unpick this idea that mathematics is just these utilitarian tools that you learnt in school. And as you say, frankly, you don't use them ever.
Exactly.
Sines and cosines, quadratic equations. So I think our education system has sort of got it wrong.
Oh, I'm so agree with you.
So it's a little bit like, what you do use is actually a lot of mathematical ways of thinking without actually being aware that they are mathematics.
Yes.
So, for example, I actually define a mathematician as a pattern searcher.
Okay.
That's actually what I do. I don't do arithmetic. I'm a rubbish at multiplication. But what a mathematician is good is spotting patterns. And I think that that's what a lot of us use in our lives is recognizing patterns in behavior of friends or patterns in our business, which means that every day is different, but we might spot a pattern which will help us to be more efficient in the way a restaurant uses its food or something. And so those patterns are very powerful tools, and those are the things we should celebrate in. It's the first shortcut I talk about in the book, is the power of patterns. So I think that we really miss out on telling people what the true mathematics is. And if they saw that, I think they would understand that actually that way of thinking is always something that's going to help me whatever I do. Whether I write an article has incredible structure to it. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you want patterns there. Building up a nice bit of symmetry is very satisfying to a reader. And these are all structures which are kind of mathematical. So, I think that's... I'm sure in Colombia as well, if you're learning a language like English, my children, they learnt how to spell, they had grammar, and that's all the technical, boring stuff.
Yes.
But they also got to read Shakespeare, to read romantic poetry, to read George Orwell. And that's the real purpose of language. I mean, here we are at the Hay Festival, celebrating the power of words to change lives, to change society. And my feeling is that we should have the same in mathematics. Okay, there's the technical side, the science, the code, but we also need to celebrate the mathematical literature, the stories, the big ideas, Fibonacci numbers, prime numbers, infinity. These are the things I think, just like Shakespeare and Keats excite a kid about English as a language. We need that for maths.
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to do with my books.
I know, because when I was reading your book, at the beginning I say, oh, this is a mathematician book, wow, I'm gonna be bored with this, but wow, what a surprise. You're a storyteller.
Yeah.
And the good thing about this book is that you're not just talking about numbers and adds and multiply and divide, you're telling us a story, you're telling us the story of the world, of civilization, ancient civilizations, Egyptians, ancient Babylon. And that's a very funny way to learn and to see how math can help us in our lives. So I found out that you show us that mathematics can help us to improve our memory, to remember things, even how to survive if you run into a vampire. Did you hear that, guys? If you run into a vampire,
what should you do?
Math can save your life. So, Marcus, is this your goal by publishing this book and hosting this amazing TV show you do? It's called The Code, right?
That's one of the programs.
It's amazing. So, is this your goal? Try to approach and reach these people and show them that mathematics can be something very helpful and useful for their lives?
I think this really sums up the goal in all that I do is to try. It's almost like a cult. I'm trying to bring people to the dark side because I think it's the light side, because it helps us to see the way the world works. And I think I'm trying to counter something that is true nearly all across the world, and not just in Europe, but here in South America. The kind of fear that people have of mathematics, which has been instilled in schools. So I'm trying to show that mathematics is connected to the natural world that we have behind us, to the buildings that we're sitting inside, to the technology that we're using to record this interview. I mean, it's amazing. How is our voices being made into zeros and ones, our images? This is all the power of this mathematical language. And once people start to see that, they begin to, oh, well, if that's mathematics, I'm a little bit more interested.
Exactly, yeah. So if you run into a vampire one of these days, this is what you need to do. No, we're not gonna tell you. You need to read the book. Para pensar mejor, el arte del atajo, distribuido por Acantilado, Grupo Penta en Colombia. Tienen que leerlo, es espectacular. So I want to circle back to the laziness subject. And I just remember what Bill Gates once said. He said that I always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because he's gonna find an easy way to do it. And perhaps that's what happened with ancient civilizations. You told us here that they were maybe tired to do these ads and ads and ads. Okay, we need a better way to do it, and that's how they discovered or invented math.
Yeah.
Right. So you told us that laziness could be beneficial in some ways because it makes you to came out with a different way to do things.
Yes.
Right.
I think laziness maybe is a dangerous word because it's quite pejorative within culture.
I was talking to you before about our culture.
Yeah.
Here in Colombia we have this quote: "La pereza es la madre de todos los vicios. Laziness is the mother of all evil."
Okay, I would say it's the mother of all invention and innovation.
Wow,
Because-
that's a very good one.
You know, if you just go the same way that everyone has gone before, you're not going to come up with a new way. What you need to do is to step back and just spend time looking out the window. Give yourself space. We don't give ourselves space to play. You know, play is so important, I think, in coming up with new ideas. And that's a sort of, I mean, I think play is another pejorative word. You know, if you introduce play into school, it's not
You're
learning.
wasting your time.
Yeah. So actually the book I've written after this, which is just being translated into Spanish, is a book about games and the power of games to change society. So it's called Around the World in 80 Games. And I think games as well have a lot of connection to mathematics. A great way into mathematics, if you have children, for example, is to get them playing games, because you want to think about the rules of the game and how to maximize your path through those rules, to understand the role of a dice.
Yes.
Will help you to win at Monopoly, for example. So I think that idea of just taking time to step back and think about a new way to do things, and perhaps to avoid just jumping in and going the long way, I think is the mother of all invention.
That's a very good way to see laziness now.
Yeah.
Maybe we owe laziness an apology. Maybe. Right?
Yes, I think, isn't it one of the 7 deadly sins, I think, as well?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Maybe,
so I don't
maybe.
think it should
Yeah.
be. And a lot of, you mentioned Bill Gates, but Babe Ruth, one of the greatest baseball
I'm a
players of all
Yankee
time.
fan.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, why was he so good at hitting home runs?
I read that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he
hated running.
he doesn't want to run all the bases.
Yeah, so he
went,
just wants to
okay.
knock it out the park,
Yes.
and then he's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, there are quite a few examples of real innovators who praise the idea of looking out the window.
Exactly. Okay. You were mentioning Shakespeare. I know you're British, so I mean, come on. You have Shakespeare, Dickens, Shelley, Byron. I mean, which writers inspire you to write, to become a writer?
Interestingly, some of my favorite authors are German.
Okay.
So I think one book that I found very inspiring when I was a student was Hermann Hesse's The Glass Bead Game.
Okay.
And this is a futuristic book about a game that society plays, and it's never quite clear how the game is played, but it seems to be that to be a great player of the game, which is what people aspire to. It's almost like Oxford's where all the intellectuals go. It's kind of like they have almost like an Oxford for playing the game in the book. And you seem to have to play the game by bringing together ideas from history, mathematics, music, philosophy, art. And when I read that, I thought, oh, that's the game I want to spend my life playing. So it's such a beautiful idea of the synthesis of knowledge is actually what we should be after, not trying to be isolated, one thing, bring all of these ideas together. So I guess many of the projects I do are inspired by that book, because in a sense my book is like a move in the glass bead game. It brings together history, technology, literature, mathematics, science, nature, in one move of the glass bead game.
It's a very good story. Thank you for sharing that. Hermann Hesse is great, and he's a Nobel Prize. He's great.
Yes, that's right. I mean, he was a very inspiring writer for me and always has been.
Nice, very nice. And I think what you do, trying to show mathematics in a good way for people, is great. That's why I try to do with reading, with books. I mean, Colombian, we're not so good at reading. Some of us think reading is bored. Some others think it's not worth it. But if you present it, read it the good way, like you do with mathematics, it can move to people to do it. That's amazing.
I think you've just got to, have that fishing rod, put the hook there, and once people take a nibble, they start to get it. And I think it's the same with mathematics. But reading, we have the same problem in the UK. That
really?
My kids' generation, they're not big readers. But I'm very pleased that one of my daughters, who wasn't a big reader, she just saw, I read to them a lot as a kid. I read a lot, so they see me reading. And she just started to get intrigued. And I gave her a book that I read on holiday. And now she's a voracious reader. It's so rewarding. But, I think reading does take time. It takes concentration. It takes some effort. And I think, our brains are a little bit being programmed for short, sharp dopamine hits.
Yeah.
Pick up my phone and a little Instagram post and I get a little buzz. And these books are in it for the long haul, and it's a different sort of, I think, a different sort of drug that the body gets from it. But once you experience it, actually, you get it.
Yes.
So I think what you're doing is very important, because it'd be such tragedy if a generation misses out on the power of literature and the power of mathematics on my side to transform society.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you for that. So finally, Marcus, I always say that when you read a book, I mean, it must leave you something good behind. It could be just one quote, it could be a new concept, or it could be a new way of seeing life. So why should we read your book? I mean, what's new in here for us?
Yeah, I guess I'd love it if people simply came away with, oh, I didn't realize that was mathematics. Now I'm interested. So my hope is that the book gives a little bit of a flavor of the things that they probably never saw when they went to school. So just understanding, oh, maths is in nature, maths is in the technology, maths is in everything. Maths is the language of the universe. They come away with that, I'll have done my job.
Well, let me tell you, you succeeded with this. I really, because when I was reading this book, I think to myself, if I only had a teacher like you when I was young, because for me, that's one of the worst memories from high school. Math was so bored. And I remember I saw you one of your shows, one of your talks. You said, maybe we are making a big mistake with education these days, because you mentioned that it's like playing an instrument, and it's like you just teaching chords.
Yeah.
But never allow the kid to play a song.
Yeah.
So that's boring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what education do these days with math. I mean, they only teach numbers and this and that, but not the application for life.
Yeah. I was very lucky at my school to have a teacher who showed me all of this wonderful music, this wonderful poetry in maths. And I suppose I'm trying to pay him back for the inspiration that he gave me. So absolutely, your idea that, I wish I'd had you as my teacher is exactly what I'm trying to do with all of my work, television, writing, work with musicians, composers, theatre, is trying to be that teacher that everyone didn't have.
Nice, very nice. Marcus, thank you so much. This has been great. I enjoyed it so much, and I know all your Spanish readers are going to enjoy this recording. Muchas gracias for spending time with us. Thank you so much.